thoughts on the Aggies?
Very talented team. Team that played for the national championship last year with a lot of really good returning players. Very familiar with them. Very familiar with their roster. Has had a great stretch here lately, and what I mean by that is obviously, you know, beating a couple of the top programs in the country, both on the road and in Tennessee and Arkansas, and played 3 really tough games against number 1 team right now. So, Omaha team.
Is there any parallel between them this year, their start, and your start last year?
I don't know. I hadn't really thought about that. I think, anytime you go through a coaching change or transition, like they did, it might take you a second, and then, but there was no question in my mind that those guys were going to play good at some point. Ryan Prager has been one of the better pitchers in the league, for a few years. I mean, him and Lampkin feel like they've been there forever. So you start there. I mean, we have 3 really good left-handed starters with Miles Patton. So, and then lineup, Lavalette. To me, Caden Sorrell is one of the best hitters in the country, no question about it. Hensler, kid from Penn, is good. Harrison, the catcher, has really done well. Really good freshman with Keel. Some guys, started playing better as of late on top of that. So it's a long lineup, good pitching staff. Have good home ballpark. So it's good challenge. Excited about it.
What does confidence do for a team? Whether that's the ability to maybe teach easier at practice, or
it's everything in baseball. A game that's designed around failure that you have to play. The game's designed to play every day. So I learned this from, or it was a quote I heard from Chris Peterson, the football coach. His confidence gets you through the setbacks, and I really think that's profound. And it's more applicable to baseball than any sport, because of the nature of it. And I've never met a great player though, or a great team that didn't really believe in their abilities. And so you have that, and then helping you persevere through adversity. It's everything.
This team's got a ton of lefties, and you just sort of mentioned it. So, do we overrate how much of an adjustment that has to be when you're facing a team with that many left-handed options, especially in the starting rotation, or is it a real adjustment?
No, I mean, I think it depends on the pitcher. I mean, even all left-handed is not the same thing, and I would say that specifically even about a couple of these guys, in terms of how you attack them. And I don't, if I have looked, and again, maybe it changed a little bit this weekend. You get a game against a guy like Doyle that, he's getting you pretty good. But I think splits-wise, we've been pretty straight up, and the ability to match up has really helped us, to get the right guys in the games at the right times. So I don't really think so. I think we'll prepare for the pitcher. I think the better the team, meaning your own team or depth of the team, you can kind of negate some of that. But good pitching is designed to beat good hitting, and so some guys, and I'm sure, we've had games against these guys. Sometimes you just got to make it tough on them. Like I remember last year, I want to say it was Lampkin in the second game. Like he was eating us up pretty good, and then boom, we put 3 on a board like that, and then took the lead. And he's a really good pitcher. That juggernaut offense we had in 23, like we won the first 2 games there, and we were winning in game 3. And then he came in there as a freshman and found a good role and slowed us down just enough, and they won a tight game. So I respect those guys a lot. I recruited Ryan Prager at Arizona. I mean, he was never going anywhere probably but Texas A&M, but good kid, been a good pitcher in this league for a long time. And so, yeah, just kind of look at him that way. I think we've been pretty straight up this year, though.
You mentioned some of the kind of experienced pitchers they have. Does leaning on a guy like Coach Yeski kind of help with that in terms of kind of having him coach?
Well, he knows. He coached both of them. I thought we had a very successful series against them last year when they were number 1 team in the country. And it helps. But now you're talking about 2 years difference. I mean, he's not the same coach. They're not the same pitchers or players. And you guys hear me talk a lot about, sometimes it's day to day with players this age level that are not pros, and so but we'll take what we can. I mean, he certainly has some good insights, I think, about the ballpark, the program, and all those types of things. But uniquely, because they're a really old team, a number of those guys are still there.
Your team pinch hitting batting averages like been in the 280s, and some guys are much higher than that. Like, how does that compare, being a stat guy, like with some of your opponents or some of your past teams you coach? Is that pretty high?
I'm not sure. I don't overly put too much stock in that, and I'll tell you why, especially in a season like this year where we have so many blowout games. Sometimes I'm just getting guys opportunities. So it's kind of like when you do it is probably the one to like look at. So I haven't put much stock in that. I think if you're like a big league manager, like that really matters. And some guys have a real knack for it. Like, last year, and it's kind of how he got going in the lineup. Like Ashton Larson was exceptional. I mean, exceptional at it. I think he was like 5 for his first 8 or 9 or something like that. And he's got, 3 or 4 hits recently, and it's largely due to his mental makeup. Some guys at this level may have a hard time adjusting to it because they're usually always used to like being in the lineup. I think our staff, does a good job. Like I'll lean over to one of the staff members, any one of 3 of them, and say, hey, get so-and-so ready to do this. And so we can kind of prep them. They've developed a good, like, get their body moving, routine going with Coach Martin, and we have a way to do that. But it's tough, man. And if you get a good one, like, it is ultra valuable,
and like, okay, so when during the critical points of the game, like when you pinch hit Beck and Larson a couple weeks ago, they had barely batted in recent games. I mean, you just get a feel, or like, do you feel like you've been really good at it this year when you're picking the guys?
I think we've had some very significant at-bats and performances by players in really critical situations. Ashton's, I believe, was against Alabama. Dalton, obviously, against Tennessee. Jake Brown, we didn't come back and win the game, but hit a big home run against Alabama to get us back in the game when we didn't have a lot going.
Pearson's.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh has come through twice, and those at-bats actually kind of flipped the momentum and set the table for some of the other ones. And, I think it's a good credit to the players that, those guys are all starters in my mind, and we brought them here for a reason. And their ability to stay connected to the mission of the team, stay prepared to play when their number's called upon, and then deliver, like, that's a real special quality. And appreciate you bringing that up, because those guys have done a really good job with it.
Like to Glenn's point, how do you know, though, when to hit the right button for the right guy at the right time?
Just preparation, and again, it doesn't mean it's always going to work, because the pitcher has a lot to do with it. And then some, it's just like against Osmer from Alabama, I think, right-handed hitters were 130 for 35 against him on the season. And then there's when you watch him on video, you can see why that's the case. And so you're not helping your guy by, running somebody up there to in a really difficult spot, or you may just have somebody that's a little bit better, like, and those go with, like, kind of sometimes how we set the lineup too, and we work hard on it, and we have a really good staff. The one positive about a long bus ride is that takes care of, should have their offense pretty dialed in by the time we get there.
Daniel mentioned last night that your recruiting pitch to him out of the portal was, it's going to be a 9-month thing. Just come for 1 year, let's win a championship, and then you're done. How, in the portal era, how often have you used, I guess, that verbiage or something similar to some guys?
Well, no, the player just kind of decides that. I mean, he was a Team USA guy. I don't know who's the expert on draft lists, but, look at projected draft lists. I mean, he's in the top 100, so, and now they're giving away so much money that, I mean, he's going to get a good bonus. And then in baseball, I wish we could go to the NFL draft style, like pick 1, boom, pick 2, and there was none of this bonus pools and manipulation. Then the best players would just go where they're supposed to. But that's not ever happening, not in Major League Baseball. At least I don't think so. So it's different for every guy. I just think he's going to have an opportunity that he came here for, And I just, assumed, that had everything gone right, that's the way that it would go. I mean, when we brought Paul here, it's for 1 year, it's just different for every guy, and there may be a guy that we thought that about that's even been a good contributor for us that you might get a second year out of, and that's great. And, it's really a totality of circumstances thing. Like, you look at what's best for the program and what's best for the player, and you can usually get there. What we try to do is educate them and not let, any emotional appeal on their side or our side get in the way. But as he said, I mean, his story is remarkable, and, he's wanted to be a Major League Baseball player for a long time. And he wasn't always Danny Dickinson that you guys get to see. He's really worked himself into this situation, and I'm proud of him for that. And so, it'll be his time, I would think, this year, and I certainly think his play this year has warranted that. He's the best defensive second baseman in the country right now.
With Zach and Kaysen, how do you kind of manage when to use them? Like, when you're in a close game, putting them out, but then on the other hand, maybe wanting to save them to set yourself up for a Sunday, for example.
Yeah, every situation's different. Home away, feel for the game, what the offense is doing, where they're at in the order, what do we want to get out of the weekend totality for the pitching staff. Obviously, we want to win every game, we want to sweep every weekend, to be clear about that. When you're playing, Oklahoma, Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, Texas A&M, I mean, you don't always get to choose. You don't get to choose where the game's at. So I think we've done a good job with that, and it's not just like a linear, like, hey, this is what it is. I'd made a decision going into Saturday, what we were going to do, with Kaysen, and it, worked out for Sunday. And, we didn't get the fourth run that we would have needed had the game stayed at 3-2. So it would have been a long outing, if you're going into extra innings. I thought we needed to keep the game close enough, so that they would use, Dylan Loy, and they did, and credit some of the hitters at the end of the game. John hit the home run. Ethan worked a long at bat, if I remember correctly, and got the pitch count up just enough where it kind of removed him from Sunday's game. So there's a lot to it. It's never as simple as sometimes it sounds. I think what's been good is we've been really good in close games, and why we've been good in close games is the offense has been able to come back when we've been behind, and then you can go to one of those guys, and they can keep getting zeros. And, some of the tough losses we had last year, it's just like, I'll use like maybe Vanderbilt or Florida had a couple bullpen pieces that were just a little ahead of ours, and that makes the difference. And so it's been nice to have a couple of those guys where you feel like you're really, really matching up.
Is Kaysen available for Friday? You said he might have a day off.
I'm not going to comment on that.
Okay.
Yeah, just from a competitive advantage or
right.
disadvantage standpoint. Yeah, I think so. I hadn't even thought of it yet. But yeah, let's just say that, and we'll just say check in with Michael Cobble on on what LSU's doing pitching wise this weekend.
Other than the fact that Zach actually pitched on Friday, why did you believe that Kaysen was maybe a better option to start on Sunday instead of Zach, or was it literally just because?
I think they're both a great option. Zach's done it, Kaysen's done it in high school, and they have the durability. We've worked them up enough. It just was a call in the moment, and I think Kaysen pitched twice in Dallas and Frisco on like a Wednesday Friday deal, but that's probably the last time that he's done it. Zach's done it a few times in SEC play.
There's always, it seems like, for really good teams, these guys that maybe come along mid-season,
Yeah.
towards the end of the season. A couple years ago, Trubinsky, Beloso.
Yeah.
Last year, Larson really got going in SEC play. What has Michael Braswell meant for the last couple weeks for you guys and this team as they kind of go forward for the rest of the season?
Yeah, he's been a very valuable player here, for 2 years, and he did did it similarly last year. And some guys are just kind of built that way, like they get better as the year goes along. And, I remember being that way as a player a little bit, obviously different level of baseball. And sometimes you just get the feel for the season. And I just love his competitiveness, in the midst of us not maybe being quite as productive offensively for a couple weeks, he was a very constant in terms of taking quality at bats, and he was just in there competing. And I think that really like lifted our team, and I'm super proud of him for that. And I think that shows maturity. He's a 4-year SEC player with a lot of playing time. Those are hard to come by. I view Josh Pearson and Michael as very valuable parts of this team because they've seen and been through a lot.
What has he done defensively to really adjust well to third base?
He's a shortstop that moved over. He does a good job playing low. He's really improved that since he got here. Like, we really went to town on helping him with that last year, and then because he did it, I felt like third base could work out for him. And man, he's played at a really high level there. And I don't think you can really ask for much more defensively than what our infield defense has given us with Jared at first, Danny at second, Steven at short, and Michael at third. I'd be disappointed if those guys weren't on the Gold Glove team for the SEC. And I'm sure there's other good ones, obviously, in our league, but we'll nominate all 4 of them for it because they've done a great job in there.
Just curious if you and Derek talked after his little streak ended, and if you see like a different light to him after that.
He's a great player, and I think the makeup is what's the separator. I mean, he's highly skilled, maybe as skilled as you could get to college, but it's always the person that's the separator. And showed up Sunday morning, determined look in his eye, and again, I'd said this, and I mean, as one of the best games I've ever seen a player play at this level, and I just carried it on into yesterday, and it's just like this focus and intent and aptitude. I said this with William Schmidt last night. It was great to see. We spent some time with him on Monday, both Nate and I, and this is what you need to do, and showed it very clearly. And then he went out and did that last night. And I think obviously Derek has that as well. William has that. So excited about obviously having those guys here.
You talked, I think, with Dylan about this quick corrections, or their ability
Yes.
to make quick corrections.
Yeah.
Similar to that?
Yeah, 100%. Tommy, I remember one of my favorite things, I could walk to the on-deck circle and go here, and then he would immediately do it. I would, it'd usually be, it's like, if you do this, we're going to get a sac fly and drive in this run, and he'd hit an opposite field homer, So he has that. Obviously a different type of player than those guys. But yeah, that's right. So yeah, he's on that, and just one of those guys. The good thing about those types of guys too is they don't stay down for very long. And again, that goes back to the confidence, getting through the setbacks. The intelligence is very highly intelligent, and then just the aptitude to apply it immediately. Chris Bryant was a lot like that too.
You've been through this many times. You guys are hovering around the top 8 in RPI late in the season. How do you kind of manage that down the stretch?
Play the games. Yeah, it's attaching anything to this only complicates situations, and they know what we want to do, and they're motivated to do it. But we gotta prepare well. Super boring today and tomorrow, and go execute on Friday. And then Friday's gonna be over, and then you gotta execute on Saturday, and then Sunday, and then got a game on Tuesday, and it's just part of it. Like I think I mentioned on Sunday, we've played our way into a really good position, and we've done that by focusing on what's directly in front of us, and that's the MO, and remains the MO. All we can control is the preparation and effort towards execution, and we'll do that.
Last time you guys were on the road in SEC play didn't go well. Do you rehash that with the guys, or?
I think we just, what I just, again, how can you turn any experience into a positive? Winning at Oklahoma, sweeping at Oklahoma, was a good accomplishment. I mean, it was an RPI top 8 team at the time. We played well. We got through some tough pitching and tough conditions. We had to go on the road on Tuesday, which was tough. And then I literally think that series was life in the SEC today. I mean, I will chalk it up to that. But I said, we can learn from that experience and, apply it into, we had a really big, series win this weekend, or good series win this weekend. Good game last night. Let's learn and just make sure we move on. And I think we're getting better as we go, mentally. And this time of year, that's really all that matters.
We're going to talk to Dalton here in a second. What do we need to know about him?
Well, I'm really proud of him on a couple fronts. Number one, I mean, transferring in the later in your career that you are anywhere is really difficult because of you had to hit percentage towards degree, all that stuff. And I mean, I laid it out to him, and there was a couple other schools in the league he could have gone to. It's like, this is not the easy, and I don't know what those paths were, but this isn't the easiest path. But he got to work and got it done in summer school. Like, really got it done. And I mean, it was like, we're talking like probably 12, 14, 16-hour days of doing assignments, homework, all those types of things. So you start there and you go, whoa, like that's impressive. And then this guy hit 18 homers. He was the Southland Newcomer of the Year last year. And he's here, and he's done great. I mean, he had some hits in the fall games we played against Samford and Louisiana Lafayette. And he did fine in the scrimmages. It's a good lineup, and, it just the opportunities haven't quite been there. And, his attitude about it has been phenomenal. I would liken it to a couple years ago. It was a returning player, but Hayden Travinsky was not playing for the first 26, 27 games of 2023. But in practice every day, you saw the intent in what he was doing. So you knew, like, there was some improvement. You could count on him, and he has experience. And then when he came in, it really lifted our team. And Dalton, obviously did that on Friday night, got a hit last night, he's helped out on the mound. So he's a valuable part of this thing, and excited about that.
With Dalton in particular, you guys have kind of shied away from the two-way thing with a lot of your guys. Why is he sort of stuck with the two-way stuff, do you think?
Well, I think one is team benefit, and it's another left-handed pitcher, obviously. So that's probably the first part of it. Secondly, again, the team benefit in the fall was, as many looks as you can get against different type of pitchers helps your team in offense. So that's kind of where it originated, but he's got a pretty good arm. And, I think we've got him out there 3 or 4 times on the mound. And then he's definitely a hitter, though, like for me. Like, there's no question that's where it leans and lends itself. And so he's doing good. And I'm more than anything, the attitude, he said something in front of the team the other day, so we sometimes after the game we'll have the players talk. And, this guy just, I don't want to quote him. He said, I wouldn't trade this year for anything. Okay, this guy that had all the personal accomplishments in the world is maybe not in that same place, but has dealt with it like a man. And it's pretty awesome. As a coach, those are the things that, make coaching worthwhile.
Do you feel pretty good about pitching Cowan and Kaysen on back-to-back nights in relief?
I think we can. We did it with Zach against Alabama. It depends on the circumstance.
Right.
It has to matter, and they all matter.
Right.
But it has to matter and fit both for them and for the team.
And same thing for each of them pitching on a Friday in relief and starting on Sunday? Depending on the number of pitches,
It just, that would depend. I'm trying to think of the guys that we've gone back to back. I know Connor Ware did it once. I believe that was against Missouri. You try to
Pitched 3 days in a row.
Yeah, what's that? DJ pitched 3 days in a row in that same series. Yeah, that's right. So it just depends on the guy and how they recover. There's conversations, like a check-in with them. We do some, metric testing for recovery. If you have the ability to do that, you need to do that. And again, like, we're trying to win every game, but I believe a lot of these pitchers have futures beyond here, and so you just gotta do it right. Like, I'll just use Sunday as an example. Like, I never want to take Kaysen Evans out of the game ever, but it was the right thing to do for him at the time, and especially when you have Zach fresh enough to finish you up. And I gave a good fist pump when Luis hit the walk-off for the 10-run rule, not just because we won the series, but it's like, sweet, this dude's carried a good load for us, and that's one less inning he's got to go back out there, meaning Zach. So,
and with how good Zach's been, even if it was a close game when you took Kaysen out, you probably could have still taken Kaysen out then, right? Like if it was
Yes.
4-2?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
We would have. Yeah, we would have. And he did his job. I think he could have kept going. It's just the previous 2 weeks is, he didn't quite throw as much. One was against Alabama, and it was like 31 pitches. And the week before was at Auburn, and I think he only threw like 25. And now he had gone 72, which was against Mississippi State. Thank you. But that had been a few weeks back. So I just ramping it correctly. And he'd had a good amount of days off. I think he'd had 8 days off. But same thing with William last night. It's like it was only 5 pitches on Saturday, but it's like I kind of had like 75 in my mind. He was around 65. And it was a good spot to bring DJ in the game. And DJ did a great job. So there's just a lot. There's strategy, and winning the game is at the top. But when you're fortunate to have guys like Kaysen, like William, you got to pay attention to that
And
stuff.
William could come back on Saturday or Sunday, right?
We'll see. Again, we got to go through that recovery process. We'll obviously want to do what's right by him, and there's a development piece that we're looking at with him, right now too, and so we'll kind of. He's recovered well. I will tell you that. Like, as we've been doing this and going through this, I would say it's possible, but we'll see.
With the recovery testing and some of the gadgets that you guys have now that maybe you didn't have 10 or 15 years ago when it was rub some dirt on it and you'll be okay the next day. How much has that sort of changed the way you view whether a guy's recovering the right way or not? Like putting a number on it or putting a guy on a scale.
Yeah, I think just that whole in baseball, just developmentally has advanced a lot, over that time period too. I think it's responsible of us to use what we have at our disposal to help the players, and that's part of the draw here. Like, there's not a guy that I'm ever going to allow walk through these doors that doesn't want to advance their career past LSU. Like, we're a training ground for Major League Baseball players, along with winning. And so how you take care of yourself is really important. I'm telling you that we have, from an athletic trainer standpoint, he's the best. If I've hired you twice, that means I think you're really, really good. And I tried to bring him here right when I got here, but LSU already had a person in place. And but Isaac is just, he's so on it. He's so on it that he understands pitching deliveries, mechanics, trouble spots, adjustments. Like, I think this was more at Arizona than LSU, but there was one time it's like, hey, let's just change this guy's arm slot. He'll be more effective, and his arm's not going to hurt anymore. Boom, but some of the testing stuff leads you to that. So he's a star.